Hey everyone, I'm Claire from the Study Gurus. In this video, I'm going to talk about how you can better manage your time in the actual exam. If you're someone who generally does study hard for exams, but you don't get the grades you think that you should have got, well then you might be falling into this trap of not managing your time well during exams. And I should know, because this was definitely one of my downfalls and the thing I probably found hardest about sitting exams. People often talk about having a timetable to stick to during your exam study, which yes, I also think you should do. But having a sort of timetable or a time plan for the exam itself is often overlooked. And this is nuts because exams are such a high pressured environment and time is so incredibly precious. Often you've got so much to write in just 2 or 3 hours. Time management is an incredibly important part of doing well in an exam. I go so far to say that people who manage their time well in the exam are generally the ones who really nail it. So what this means is that before you go into an exam, you need a time management plan. Let's say your exam is going to be entirely multi-choice questions, and let's say the exam is going to be 2 hours long, and that there's going to be 100 questions in the exam. Well, firstly, you need to make sure that you've got a bit of time at the end of an exam to maybe go over it, but also to act as a buffer. So in this example, we've got 2 hours or 120 minutes to answer 100 questions. Let's take off 20 minutes at the end of the exam to leave you this buffer time. That leaves you with 100 minutes to answer 100 questions. So obviously that leaves you with 1 minute to answer each question. You don't need to have a stopwatch and stop answering each question after every minute, but you should be keeping a general eye on the time. So after 20 minutes, you should be at about question 20. After 40 minutes, you should be at about question 40 and so on. All you need to do is keep your eye on the clock and make sure that you're roughly on track. If you're a couple ahead or behind, that's okay. But if you start to notice that you're falling really behind, you either need to pick up the pace if that's possible. But if you notice that you're spending a lot of time on questions that are too hard or that you just don't know the answer to, then move on and go forward and answer the questions that you can answer quickly and easily. Hopefully you'll have a little bit of time at the end of the exam to come back to those harder questions. Now let's say it's not a multi-choice question exam, it's more of an essay-based exam or just long answers. And let's say again, it's a 2-hour exam or 120 minutes. And let's say that there are 4 essay topics or 4 long answer questions that you have to answer. Well then in this case, if each of the 4 questions are worth the same number of marks, then you should be spending 25 minutes on each of the 4 questions. So again, make sure that you keep your eye on the clock. At 20 minutes, ask yourself, where are you at? Are you only halfway through the first question or are you almost done with it? If you're almost done, then that's fine. It sounds like you've got time to answer it fully. If you're only halfway through that essay question and your 20 minutes is up, then you should probably think about scribbling out a conclusion and moving on to the next one. You can always leave a little bit of space on the exam paper and come back and fill it out at the end if you have time. But you don't want to waste marks on that one essay question when the other 3 are worth just as much. Even if you haven't written a complete essay for that first question or your long answer isn't as good as you hoped it would be, you probably have still secured quite a number of marks and you're better off spending your time on the next 3 questions. If you're anything like me, then by the time you get to the exam, you've put in so much work that you really want to show the examiner that you know your stuff and you want to jot down every little detail. So I found that being disciplined about sticking to what we call an exam timetable was really hard because you know that you know more and you want to write it down. But I definitely lost marks in spending too much time on early questions and then running out of time for later ones. By the time of the exam, getting a good grade is now about using the short amount of time that you have as well as possible. So even if you know more and you haven't had time to write it down, you've got to try and be as disciplined as possible, wrap up what you're saying and move on to the next question. And if you make an exam timetable plan, including a buffer of time for the end, well then you're always going to have a little bit of breathing space for if you don't quite stick to your timetable, then it's not the end of the world. But it is really good to try and stick to your timetable as closely as possible so that you can use that buffer time at the end to go back and look over things that you might have missed or you can use that time to go back to questions that you didn't quite finish and finish off writing something that's going to give you a couple of extra marks.